Hey everyone, how's it going? Roger here with Escape from LA and gonna talk about societal decay, which I think is pretty undisputed fact that our society is definitely in decay. So I'm gonna talk about three books I recently finished up and kind of give you a little rundown of each of the three. They all tie into societal decay in some way or another. The first one is Men Without Work by Nicolas Eberstadt. I think it's from 2016, and he did an updated edition post scamdemic. He's an economist, so a lot of charts and graphs, numbers, data, statistics, talking about not just unemployment among American men, but the group of men that are not only without a job, but they're not even looking for a job. So we'll get into that. The next one is written by his wife, actually, Mary Eberstadt, and it's Primal Screams. How a sexual revolution created identity politics. And she goes into how once the pill was introduced into society, it led to the decline in family in this country, which resulted in loss of meaning and identity for a lot of people. And so they had to find that meaning elsewhere. And that resulted in identity politics. And the third one is The Psychology of Totalitarianism by Mathias Desmet. This is from 2022. Talks about what he calls mass formation and basically totalitarianism. Totalitarian government is a form of mass formation, and he says that it's like a hypnosis, and we currently have fertile grounds for that around the world because Enlightenment ideals, scientific revolution evolved to the point where it opened the door for these type of things to happen. So let's get into each of these and talk about each one of these for a little bit. First off, men without work. So these are men that not only are unemployed, but they're not looking for a job. And a subcategory of this, which he kind of sets to the side, are the guys that are either in school, getting an education, or some type of training. So aside from that, you got a ever growing number of men that have no job and aren't looking for a job. They're not working on getting trained or educated. This number has been increasing ever since the end of World War II, but it really exploded and continues to be a problem ever since the 1960s. So we got large numbers of these men who don't work, aren't looking for work, aren't getting an education. I wonder how these people are supporting themselves, you might say. Well, they're not supporting themselves. You and I are supporting them, or the women in their lives are supporting them. So that's a pretty sad state of affairs, right? There's no self-respecting man is gonna be content to suck the teat of Uncle Sam and be a burden on society by allowing his livelihood, his support to be other members of society or the woman in their life, right? So these guys are at least in part being supported by their girlfriend or their wife or maybe their mommy. So if you have an ever-growing number of these people, then obviously these people, there's some type of issue going on, because I wouldn't say it's normal for a man to lie around the house all day and play Nintendo or whatever it is. I mean, don't you feel like shit? I know there's been times in my life where I've been unemployed and it's depressing as hell. You know, was I always looking for a job? Yeah, I'm not going to not have a job and not at least be looking for one. You know, now when I was in school. Maybe that's a different story. But like I said, this isn't what he's talking about. So obviously, there's some type of psychological thing going on with these guys. Uh, a morale issue, a self-esteem issue, mental health issue, drug alcohol issue. You know, I would think most regular people wouldn't say it's a normal, acceptable thing for a grown ass man who's perfectly healthy, capable of working, to not be working and not look for a job and to be supported financially by his girlfriend or his wife or his mommy or the taxpayers. And he does say that there's a big correlation between this group of men. I guess a large number of these guys are ex-cons, formerly incarcerated for crime. You know, and some people say, oh, we have an incarceration problem in this country. We have too many people locked up. We don't have too many people locked up. We have too many people committing crime. You should be locked up if you're committing certain crimes. Society not only has the right to incarcerate dangerous people, it has an obligation to itself and to its members to be protecting us from these dangerous people. Yeah, I for one don't want some perv pedo or rapist or murderer running free, although that's what we have now, letting all these criminals out in the name of wokeism. A couple years back, it was in the name of the Wu flu. But anyways, that's obviously a sign of societal decay when you got ever increasing number of grown-ass men not working. Let's get into the next book, Primal Screams by Mary Eberstadt. So she makes what I think a sound argument and details how since the sexual revolution, i.e. the introduction of the birth control pill back in the 60s, the 60s. What a decade, huh? So ever since then, you've had basically the decay and crumbling of the family. The percentage of out-of-wedlock childbirth since the 1960s has increased across the board in our society. The family size has shrunk. And she points out that aside from the obvious stuff, which we've probably all heard about before, when a child grows up without a daddy, which is usually the case because usually the woman raises the kids. But my argument is, you know, whether it's the mom or the dad raising the kid, that's no bueno because that's hard work to raise a kid. Most important job in society is to raise children, and you're doing it on your own. There's no way you can convince me that person doing it on their own is going to do as good a job as if they were married and had help. And my personal take is the ideal situation would be a married man and woman. You know, I'm pretty sure we all know what the arguments, why that's preferable to my two dads or my two moms. You know, people need to see an interaction between male and female as role models. So people need role models and behavioral modeling, and they also need to interact with other people and people of the opposite sex growing up. And she's saying that when kids are only children, they don't have that. And with smaller families, children these days not only have fewer to no siblings and are probably raised by one parent instead of by mom and dad in a married, intact household, they have fewer aunts and uncles, fewer cousins. And she says that that has a big impact on how a person defines themselves or identifies, because throughout most of human history, people by and large have identified with their family. And these days, without the family, extended family, people have less to identify with. So that opens the door to identify with other groups. And this comes into play with meaning. Human beings need meaning, and that's another thing. The decline in religiosity goes hand in hand with the decline in the family. And so now you got two big elements that people use for meaning and identity thrown out the window over the last several decades: family and religion. Where the religion gives them meaning, their beliefs, and if you attend services regularly, you're also part of that community. Well, all that stuff's been on the wane for several decades. And now you got people, they have no one to identify with. They don't have meaning in their life. That opens the door for identifying with, if you're black, other black people. If you're white, other white people. If you're this, other this people. If you're gay, this gay group. And when you identify with those people, now you got meaning in your life based on identity politics. So as you can see, she's using the sexual revolution and the breakdown of the family, loss of religious life as an explanation for people these days identifying and getting meaning from different areas than what we used to. And as a result, we get the situation we have now. Now, Mr. Desmet here, in the Psychology of Totalitarianism, he has a different take on why our society is where it is. He says it stems from the Enlightenment and the Enlightenment values and the scientific revolution and the evolution of that type of thinking to where we get where we are now, where, people think that, experts this and experts that, and everything's completely rational, and, toss out anything that's not a totally rational number. And he says this leads to a certain type of thinking, and it becomes fertile ground for what he calls mass formation. And this mass formation is kind of like hypnosis, but on large scale. It's like the mob rules, insanity of the crowd, right? And that's where totalitarian comes in. He says basically that's a form of mass formation, and it's just applied into the government. And you get the type of thinking where you don't allow any type of dissenting views. And he ties this into what we saw with the scamdemic. Anybody who had a differing take on where the thing originated or how to proceed with doing anything, whether that regarded masking, distancing, injections, shutting things down, anybody who dissented had to be silenced. And we saw plenty of that. And I agree with him to a large extent. He does get into some stuff that seems to be tangential, and those sections of the book I wasn't too keen on, but his main points I think were quite strong, and he tied into some of the climate madness here and there. He mentioned it, but I think he missed the mark because he didn't really get into the fact that thinking with the scamdemic and with the climate hysteria, those are just subsets. Those are just part of the wokeism, which is the real mass formation that's going on. Because part of that wokeism also includes the CRT and the LGBTQ isms, or whatever you want to call it. But I'd say these are good reads if you want to kind of get more information about what's going on, some one book offering a lot of statistic about one aspect of societal decline, and the other two books kind of more going into a couple different theories as to why we have the societal decline going on. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.